Hi everyone, and welcome back to the George Collection. I'm Rachel Rightside Blonde. It's been 25 years since JFK Jr.'s plane went down, and a lot's changed in those 25 years.
About both the reality and the potential effects of Y2K.
One by one, students returned to Columbine High and left bouquets of flowers in a park half a mile away.
The plane just exploded. What? It's 737.
It what?
Like the World Trade Center. Who are you talking to? Oh, God.
38 counts of fraud and conspiracy.
Lawyers for Jeffrey Skilling and Kenneth Lay threw around complicated notions about margin calls and short selling.
We fought the good fight, and some things work, some things don't.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
That U.S. warships and planes, there were F-117 stealth bombers involved, launched the opening salvo of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
If ever the cavalry was needed, it is now, and it is in New Orleans.
CBS projects that Senator Barack Obama of Illinois will be the next president of the United States.
In-depth coverage now on the growing financial crisis. Yesterday, the House rejected the $700 billion bailout plan, sending shockwaves through Wall Street.
Just moments ago, senators approved that huge health care reform bill. Our senior congressional correspondent, Jonathan Karl, is live in Washington. History made on Christmas Eve, John.
Undoubtedly, Dan, this was a strictly party line vote.
6-7 Sandy Hook School. Callers indicating she thinks there's someone shooting in the building.
We heard a loud bang. We thought that something fell. Then we heard another.
A lot of breaking news here this morning. The breaking story just moments ago, the Supreme Court and this landmark ruling, the court making same-sex marriage legal in this country across every state in this nation.
Right now, a historic moment. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Donald Trump wins the presidency.
In a matter of seconds, a country music festival turned tragic, a storm of gunfire raining down upon an innocent crowd.
Several breaking developments tonight in the coronavirus outbreak.
The first, a major announcement from President Trump.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
There have been violent scenes across the United States in response to the death of a black man, George Floyd.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation that never stopped.
The 1/6 attack for the future of the country is a profoundly more dangerous event than the 9/11 attacks. And in the end, the 1/6 attacks are likely to kill a lot more Americans than were killed on the 9/11 attacks, which will include the casualties of the wars that lasted 20 years following.
I've been doing these shows for over 2.5 years now. I own all the original George magazines, and I can tell you for certain that JFK Jr. knew things. What's really hard to imagine, at least for me from Iowa, is the courting that must have gone on between him and those who knew what he knew. The birthday letters, the thank you letters, the tours, countless other things that were going on that to the outside person looked normal. But what was really going on under the surface in Washington, D.C. in the mid-90s? By now, many of us have seen the letter that was written to Joe Biden in 1994 that was supposedly written by John Kennedy Jr. that starts with, "Senator Biden, you are a traitor, ... We've all seen this declassified document making the rounds with John Kennedy Jr. calling Senator Biden a traitor. And I'll admit that when I first saw it, I thought it was all bogus. I thought, why would he take the time to write Senator Biden a letter about how he's a traitor when John Kennedy Jr. in the mid-90s was working on George magazine? I also thought this letter was just those words, "Senator Biden, you are a traitor, signed John Kennedy." That's not the case. The letter is 2 full pages, and it's on notebook paper. From what I can see, the FBI took these letters seriously. Joe Biden was the victim, and John Kennedy Jr. was being looked at as somebody who sent these threatening letters. And from what I can tell, they came back with nothing conclusive, that it either was or was not John Kennedy Jr. I've talked to somebody that I trust, and this person told me that those letters were legitimately from JFK Jr. There is no proof that the letter is real, from what I can find, other than the word from my friend. So just for the sake of this episode, let's assume the letter is real. The letter was written on 2 notebook papers and ripped out of the notebook. And before you ask, what did the letter say? Well, we may never know, because the FBI, I guess, didn't know how to photocopy back in the 90s. Everything else they could photocopy, but that letter in particular, you can't read it. It's all blacked out. Was that by design? And who was it protecting? Was it protecting John Kennedy Jr. or was it protecting Biden based on the information in the letter? Who knows? What did John Kennedy know to prompt him to write this letter on notebook paper, not type it out, not send a memo, but send it on an actual notebook piece of paper with handwritten lettering? Based on the few words that I can make out in the letter, it does appear to be close to John Kennedy's handwriting, but we can't be sure. What I find extremely interesting in this whole debacle is the timing of all of this. So this letter was sent in 1994 to Joe Biden, and then in 1995, John Kennedy Jr. started getting legit threats on his life from places like Colombia. And who do you think of when you hear of people from Colombia? What 3-letter agency do you think of? So those started happening in 1995. So we have the letter sent from John in 94, then we have threats in 1995. George Magazine also started in late 1995 in October. And is that when those threats started? We hear about all these threats. Is that when they started, was 1995, after that letter to Joe Biden? I had really hoped I could find out more about this letter and read it and find a good copy of it to help make sense of what went down in 1994 and 95 before George came out. But it appears it's meant to be fog for now. I searched and searched for a clear version of this letter, one that I could say 100% without a doubt it is the exact letter. I couldn't find it. 5 hours one night, 3 hours another night, just looking through documents trying to find this letter. I spent time on my apps trying to adjust the settings to see if I could get this letter to at least read a sentence. No success. So for now, I feel like this letter is just meant to be a question mark for us. But what I do know is that the timing of that letter and the timing of the threats and the timing of George Magazine, that connects the dots right there. Is it a coincidence that John Kennedy Jr. wrote then Senator Biden a letter calling him a traitor back in 1994, and now he's our current president? I don't think so. I would love to know what John Kennedy knew. And I think that letter holds a lot of clues and deeper reasons as to why he started George Magazine. Speaking of timing, in 1999, John Kennedy Jr. was speculated to be running for the Senate in New York, and so was Hillary Clinton. And on JFK Jr.'s April 1999 cover, it says, "Why Hillary won't be senator." Then later that year, in August of 1999, after the plane crash, we have the political humor issue with Ben Stiller sharpening a pencil in a Bill Clinton pencil sharpener. You just can't make this stuff up. I believe that this quote-unquote courting went on after July of 1999, and I still think it goes on today. And I think it's interesting to sit back and watch all of this play out. I want to end this episode on a happy note because I think there are a lot of good things happening. In my hands, I'm holding the farewell issue with JFK Jr.'s face on the cover. And if you look up the meaning of farewell,
of this extraordinary magazine, George, which is a hoot of a magazine. I thought you were a lawyer.
I was.
What happened?
Well, we decided, actually taking a cue from folks like yourself and you around the 1992 election, that there was an opportunity here to change the definition of a political magazine. Certainly the way Americans were accessing information about politics and politicians was changing. Candidates were appearing on late night talk shows, on talk radio, on sitcoms, and there was a kind of a leveling process. And while the rest of media clearly had caught up with that, we felt that political magazines per se hadn't.
Your mother was a hell of an editor at Doubleday.
That's what I hear.
Would she have liked George?
I think she would have.